As the mayor of the town of Clayton, I'd like to call our regular town council meeting to order. I'd like to ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Most gracious and heavenly Father, we pause to give you thanks for all the many blessings of this day, Lord. And we ask now that you be with us as we proceed with the business for the town of Clayton. For it's in your great name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor, there are two adjustments. The first would be to remove from 5 introductions and special presentations, item A, and the end of the agenda for under the closed session, or there's number 11. This general statutes are going to be the 143-318-11A5 and B3.
All right, I have that noted on our agenda. Up next is your consent agenda.
Move to approve. Move to approve. Second.
I'm so glad we're harmonious tonight. This is great. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. And the motion carries. Up next, under introductions and special presentations, will be the community garden volunteer acknowledgement.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm just going to say a quick word, and then we have a video that has been produced that'll capture a lot of what the garden is and who it serves and how it serves our community. And then I'm going to invite Roy Lewis up to come make a presentation of the awards, as well as we're going to invite Mayor to come down and do a quick photo if we may. But just some short prepared remarks. 8 years ago, a tiny seed had been planted behind the Clayton Community Center, an idea to build a community garden. With grants from the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Association, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and an amazing partnership with Johnston County Cooperative Extension and their master gardeners, we have watched that tiny garden bloom into an incredible community asset. We would like to watch the short video that helps tell the story of this wonderful place and the volunteers behind it. There are really two individuals that also need a lot of recognition. This garden wouldn't be possible without our county extension agent, and that's Marshall Warren, who wasn't able to be here with us this evening. But in particular, there's one individual who you might recognize his voice. You probably don't recognize him by face because, radio is kind of a tough medium to see people's face. But Roy Lewis, who's routinely featured on the Weekend Gardener program on WPTF, and if anybody's been around North Carolina for a number of years, that's a standard on Saturday mornings. But Roy is really the leader of the gang, if you will, at the garden. And without Roy taking that leadership role, which he does at a tremendous salary, number one, so which is bupkis. The garden wouldn't be what you see today. It couldn't be this way if it were something that were led by town staff. This is really only because it's out of the heart and love of an individual volunteer. So that's Roy Lewis.
We've had people say, well, we don't really need a whole lot of farmers, we got grocery stores. Well, grocery stores has to get it from somewhere, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to limit the grocery store a little bit and have it fresh right out of the backyard. And I'll tell you, there's nothing like going out and picking that first fresh ripe tomato or those ears of corn or those butter beans, whatever it is that you really like. Now, I've been gardening all my life. My grandmother taught me, from just a little guy, My name is Roy Lewis. I'm a master gardener with Johnston County Cooperative Extension Service. And what we try to do here is just not just a community garden, this is a demonstration garden. It teaches you how to grow. We've grown celery out here. We grow a lot of garlic here. Garlic's something that's really easy to grow as a general rule. But most people are scared to do those kind of things. When we first started, right behind me was this little bitty, 6 or 7 boxes, and the deer were eating it up faster than we could plant it. one of our volunteers come in and paid for and installed this entire fence line for us because she was that adamant about, this is a good project. So she put this in, and to be honest with you, this garden probably would not exist without this fence, because the deer will just eat you out of house and home out here. So we've made this a place of refuge for our gardeners. It's nothing like peace and harmony in the garden. We've got our epic tomato area, we've got our greenhouses. We did kohlrabi, which is basically a cabbage in a bowl. We do Chinese cabbage, bok choy. Well, today we've got about 7 or 8 master gardeners. We also have volunteers that are from the community. As a matter of fact, one of the volunteers, community volunteers, help us with our kids' garden. What we try to do is we try to go in and let them grow things that they can go and touch and feel, and put seeds in the ground. And it's kind of cute because you give them 5 seeds and they just go and just dump them, and that's fine because most of them are going to come up anyway. So, but it gives them the knowledge of where food really comes from. It doesn't come from the grocery store. We have Boy Scout projects, Eagle Scout projects going on all the time. Some are just conservation type projects. We've had Girl Scouts out. Our produce goes to Clayton Area Ministries, and they have been a tremendous asset. Well, every Wednesday night we have a class here at the rec center, and it's A to Z gardening. We have a lot of people that come in, and in my time here, we have probably had somewhere around 400, 450 people that have taken the class. All of our master gardeners are more than willing to help you to learn and to teach you how it all works. And we got regular bees down here on the end, but that was put in by the Beekeepers Association. But we have our bee hotel that has been put in. We are in the process right now of including grapevines. We've got our blueberry bushes back here, and they will be producing this year. We're going to put in a fig tree or 2. We're going to put in dry rain gardens out here. It's basically to enhance people's ideas of what they can do. We're going to expand that a little bit, and we're going to go into landscaping. We'll have 3 weeks of, how do you get your yard to look like $1 million, We have gone into the nutrition side of all of our, what we produce, and we show the nutrient value, the vitamins, how it interacts with you. So we've gone a long way as far as increasing our quality, trying to increase quality of life, trying to increase the quality of people's perception of what they can grow.
All right, Roy, if you and the gardeners could come up. Man. You want to say anything?
No.
Okay, awesome. Well, as the mayor's on his way down, I'm going to give Roy his certificate because it's really the least I can do, Roy. I appreciate all the hundreds and hundreds of hours you spend out there on an annual basis, and thank you sincerely.
You're very welcome.
And these are for the other volunteers, and then Stacy's going to get you guys.
Maybe we'll hand those out afterwards,
Right.
since you know everybody, but if you guys would gather around the mayor, sort of on either side, and all.
Did you want me to say something? I got all kinds of numbers for you.
thank you for what you're doing.
That's perfect, I can give you all a little. I can't see you in the back, you have to come up front.
We all stand
All right. Boy, I need to see you. You can go on the end, you can sit on the end. Perfect, all right. What do we say? Say peas. Carrots. Hold on 1 second. One more, two. There you go, yay. Great. Thank you very much.
And if y'all could just give us 1 minute more, Roy's got some statistics for you guys. I know y'all saw the pounds of vegetables that we put out every year, but it's astounding the impact of our garden.
Good evening, gentlemen, ladies. Thank you for having us. Thank you for recognizing us as a group. The Clayton Community Garden is green and growing. We have about 26 master gardeners and volunteers that come out each week. Some can't be here every week, but even today we grew by another person. We had a brand new volunteer to just step into into our midst. So we are doing pretty well. Since 2014, the garden has donated over 15,000 pounds of food to CAM, and I've estimated or extrapolated that we have provided about 1,500 hours in 2019, to the town of Clayton and to the area. As master gardeners, we have donated over 10,000 hours at about $25 per hour throughout the county. So the town of Clayton has almost picked up an entire person as far as, having people out on, in the back of the garden and a part of recreation. I am certainly excited about that. We have, as well as a number of people that we've had come through the system, we've acquired about 9 different people that have become master gardeners or in the process of becoming master gardeners since we started. So I think that's pretty good. This is a great symbiotic relationship between the town, between the volunteers, between Cooperative Extension, and I just would like to hope that will continue to happen for a very, very long time. Our garden has finally gotten to a point where you see what you see on the video, but when I first started out there, we really didn't have much of a garden. And it takes somewhere between 7 and 9 years to have a sustainable, diverse garden situation. Today, I can say that we're within a year of this garden being totally sustainable. We have wildlife, that positive wildlife like hawks and owls. We don't have a squirrel problem. We don't have a raccoon problem because of those guys. Our biggest problem right now are deer, and they got our strawberries pretty well over the weekend. But that's okay. This is farming, and everybody that's been in the farming community understands that everything's not going to go as well as it should every year. But our goal this year is 10,000 pounds of food that we will be able to donate. And as you can see, the garden is much greater than what it was 2 years ago when we stood here in front of you. So I hope that what we're doing is a positive not only for the town of Clayton, but also for the residents, and certainly has been quite a help to CES as well. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for the recognition, and hope that maybe in a couple more years we can come back and say we've done even more. Thank you.
We want to thank you too. We want to thank all of you very much for this, because should the bottom, heaven forbid, but should the bottom fall out in this great country of ours one day, the people who will be the most popular and the most important will be those who know how to grow food. You know, it won't be about, can you get my electricity turned back on? It'll be like, can you show me how to grow potatoes or tomatoes? As I sat here and watched the video, I had a flashback to the early 1970s when we would go out to my uncle's house at Cleveland School and we would pick butter beans. And of course, as a child that was unmedicated ADD and ADHD, I was trying to pick everything quickly so we could move on to something more enjoyable. Little did I know that with the butter beans, you had to like feel it to make sure it was time. I was just pulling them because I thought it was what you did. It looked like what everybody else was doing. You know, I remember sitting around with large 5-gallon buckets of fresh snap beans, and everybody had a dishpan, and I thought if you just like broke them in half, it would be done more quickly, and then I found out I had to go back and redo mine, you know? But you would sit around and do that kind of thing, and you would talk and you would chat. And you know, nowadays we have this thing called Snapchat, but back in the day we had snap beans and you sat around and talked until it was all done. It's completely different. But we can't thank you enough for what you do and for how you engage the public at all ages. It's so important, and that's what we are all about with the town of Clayton. So on behalf of the town council and the entire town of Clayton, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, the rest of this meeting is not nearly as exciting as what's just taken place. But if you want, sorry guys, but if you want to stay, you're welcome to. But if you would like to leave, I'll give it a minute to clear the chamber and then we will start our business. Oh, the greatest invention ever invented was when somebody created that butter bean shaker. I'll carry it right out there.
The trash can, one right here.
We did. I'm not doing that anymore. 50 years of that. Thank you. All right, now we're going to move on with our agenda. The next item is a public hearing. It's the 2019-239 SUP Meadow Special Use Permit. This is a quasi-judicial function, and I will turn it over to the attorney for a briefing on the quasi-judicial process.
During a quasi-judicial hearing, the council sits in a quasi-judicial function as opposed to legislative, which means they basically sit like a court of law. They will only hear evidence that is presented this evening that is competent, material, and substantial. That does mean that it has to be provided pursuant to being sworn or affirmed by the clerk. So anyone that is wishing to speak will need to make sure they are affirmed at the appropriate time. The council will not consider hearsay evidence. That is evidence that is statements that were made outside of the chambers this evening. And they will only entertain evidence that they hear this evening in making their decision. Madam Clerk, are you ready to affirm?
I am ready.
Anyone wishing to speak, meaning the applicant, any witnesses they have, anyone in support of, or anyone in opposition to, should affirm at this time. Please stand.
Please stand. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief? Yes. Thank you. When you come up to offer your testimony, you'll see a sign-in sheet on both podiums. If you could just make sure that you complete that sign-in sheet. Thank you.
Good evening, Samantha Wullenwaber, Planning Director. This is the Meadow View, formerly called the Creech Tract Major Modification. My presentation will be the Special Use Permit Major Modification, as well as the Preliminary Plat, acting as their major subdivision. Again, this is a modification of a previously approved subdivision and townhome development. The request is currently to develop 188 townhome lots and modify the original dimensional standards, and the location is off of Old US Highway 70 and Shotwell Road. As you can see in the aerial photo, that it does spin quite a ways and has frontage on multiple different roads. The property is 38 acres. Something new we have added, but my stars are not lined up. In your packets, there should be a map. If not, we've started putting stars where we put our public notice signs, just as informational, so you all know where we're putting our green signs. The proposed site is zoned R10. They do want to decrease from 189 lots to 188, so losing one townhome. And another big change on this is you may remember the right in only without a right out, and then the unique way to turn around if you get to that intersection from the other direction. So that has been removed, and they have connected into Lakewood Acres, the subdivision. So they do have the correct number of access points. They would have 3 access points. And it is still the same mixture of alley and front-loaded units. These all have individual driveways and parking areas directly in front or behind of their townhomes. And the amenity center has also moved. It was in the lower portion of the US 70, closer to Parkview, and now it is in the middle. In the previous approval, and there was some modifications to that, it showed a connection into Highgate. That's no longer there, and the amenity center is going to be located there, and the amenity center is going to have a pool and a pool house. Still subject to any and all original traffic improvements. There was a joint TIA done with the Highgate subdivision, which is to the north. This is a table showing the previously approved and then the current proposed dimensional standards and setbacks. As you can see, there's not many changes, and this did go through the TRC process, and staff is, we are in agreement with these standards. A lot of times we look at these to make sure if it's a front-loaded unit that that garage is pushed back enough so that when you have people walking on the sidewalk is not blocked. So that's a key thing that we look at when looking at dimensional standards, and that is a safety concern if the sidewalk is blocked and you have to push people into the road. This is a potential layout or the facades of the townhomes. It is a mixture of different types of materials, vinyl siding, shake and board and batten, and then there's some veneer accents. It is consistent with the future land use map as medium density residential, which would allow up to 5 units an acre, and this is currently proposed at 4.83 units an acre. And they have addressed the findings of fact for the special use permit and the subdivision. Some considerations for tonight, as you see on your agenda, there's 2 separate items, actually 3 if you include the wastewater allocation, which engineering is here to discuss if needed. So you would need separate motions for each of those, the special use permit, the preliminary plat modification, and then the wastewater allocation. The conditions did stay the same as the previous approval, but we will say that the previous ones are struck through and these are the new conditions, but they are the same. That should be it. And again, this is a modification to originally approved townhome development and subdivision. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions at this time? Mr. Bunn?
Samantha, last week in our retreat, we were talking about street size, widening of streets, because we're experiencing problems now with fire trucks getting through because you have trouble with street parking. Does this address those issues, or is still going to have issues with this?
No, this is to the current standards of a 50 and 55 foot right of way. We discussed that during the original approval.
Okay.
Mr. Granis?
Samantha, when do you anticipate the traffic signal to be installed at Shotwell and Covered Bridge?
We have a meeting with the developers who have input on that, all the traffic improvements in this area on March 23rd. We have an internal meeting to help facilitate between DOT and the developers. And Highgate is currently near their capacity of building permits and COs until a traffic signal is installed.
Estimate on what that looks like as far as the build out?
I do not know. I will have to follow up on that.
I also know that we have another subdivision coming to us that I think will be involved with that as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And there's certain stipulations that they have to pay, or they have to contribute a percentage, and how that works out, we will all negotiate.
And with respect to the front-loaded, the 20-foot driveways, I'm assuming are going to be enough room to be able to park a car and not be blocking sidewalk?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, ma'am. We'll now hear from the applicant.
Good evening. Sean Heim with Timmons Group. I don't know if you know my address, 5410 Trinity Road in Raleigh. And I'm really here to answer questions. As she covered mostly everything. This was a previously approved plan. We have a specific builder now, so most of what we did was just clean up a few things, fix some of the road layout to try to fit their product a little better, and get rid of that sort of secondary access right there off of Old Garner Road. And instead, we made that connection to the existing neighborhood. I don't know if you had any specific questions about the design.
Questions or comments? Mr. Granis?
Sean, could you give us what your professional credentials are again?
Well, I'm a licensed land surveyor. Sorry. Thank you very much. I am a licensed land surveyor, but I work for a civil engineering firm. Mostly what I do is actually subdivision design.
With respect to the findings of fact, I have a few questions about those. Finding of fact number 1, you indicate that development will be built according to the Town of Clayton standards and will provide safe and adequate access to the road network and to the Town of Clayton utilities, but you don't explain how you intend to do that, or how there will be safe and adequate access. Could you speak to that?
Can you switch it back to the layout? Is there a specific question? I will say we have coming off Shotwell Road what we have is a collector road, and that collector road comes basically all the way down and back down to Old Garner Road. All of that road there has no driveways off of it, so those are all rear access to help with traffic running through. So the main entrance to the site, which is something that the town had wanted, was a collector road. So there's less cars pulling out into the street, and the side roads are the ones that will have the front access townhomes. So the only access points off that road are rear alley access. There is a existing gravity sewer on the northeast side of the property that we're going to be tying into, and we have water line access off of Old Garner Road and Shotwell Road that we'll actually be looping the whole water system through.
Then, under finding of fact number 3, the application will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property and will not be detrimental to the use or development of adjacent properties or other neighborhood uses. Your answer was the project is in a transition area between multifamily apartment, commercial properties, and single-family neighborhoods. The development is buffered on the north and east by stream buffers. The main road connections are directed to major roads. This project will not affect or hinder the use of adjacent properties. Could you expand on that a little bit with respect to will not affect or hinder the use of adjacent properties?
Well, the main access to this property is off of Main Arterial Road, Shotwell and Old Garner Road. there is another access to this existing neighborhood, Lakewood, which is right there. So we're just trying to tie the street network together there. And we are going to improve. There's part of that's paved, but there's an actual section of gravel drive that we will actually pave to an NCDOT standard, because that's an actual NCDOT road right there. But most of our accesses are not going through other neighborhoods. The shaded areas at the top and to the right is a stream buffer. So this project is mostly self-contained outside the areas that are backing up to, again, Lakewood. We are going to be planting a buffer along the east side of Lakewood, right there. Vegetated buffer will be right there. And then the piece to the southwest of the property is sort of a corner piece that I think is in the town is more of a possible commercial type of use. Across the street is those existing apartments that were just put in. So it's sort of going from apartments, commercial, to multifamily, and then we go to single family where Highgate is and other adjacent neighborhoods are.
And can you share with me what type of homes are going to be in Lakewood? Do you know?
They're existing single family. It's an older neighborhood. It's been there a little while. It's a county subdivision currently. We are stubbing water line and sewer. So if they ever need those services by the town and need to annex there, it would be fairly simple for them to be able to actually get town utilities, but they're currently in the county.
And would you consider the prices comparable of your development to the Lakewood development property?
Well, it's a different product. Lakewood is an older established neighborhood. I'd have to look to see what their current values are. These are going to be brand new units. They are townhomes, so they are in a little bit of a different price category, but I don't know what the developer is here. So we could possibly speak what they think the price point will be for the townhomes. I don't know what the existing current values of these homes in Lakewood are.
My name's Jay Colvin. I'm with the developer, Dan Ryan Builders. I've been in the industry either observing or consulting in some manner for over 10 years. Just to give you some qualifications behind my end. The price point's going to be in the mid 200s out the door, and it'll be around a little less than a 1,600 square foot product. So on a price per foot basis, there haven't been any really recent sales in the Lake Drive neighborhood that I've checked on in a while, but it'll be, I would assume, a significantly higher price per foot. Additionally, there's going to be a community pool and bathhouse amenity for the area, and they're going to have significant open space within the community, and then almost a very, very small percentage of the homes in the neighborhood actually back up to another unit. So most of the units are going to have a pretty significant open space, either buffer, protected, or otherwise behind them. So they'll have a lot of privacy. We think we'll have a fair amount of premiums for those home sites as well. So I would expect them to sell at a higher price per foot, and certainly not damage price per foot values of surrounding homes.
Okay. At what point will the amenities be constructed?
Well, they're set in phase 2 right now. So phase 1 is to the west where Shotwell Road is, and they're planning to build that portion first and start generating some sales so they can go ahead and finish phase 2, and the amenity will be built as part of phase 2. There's 2 phases in the project.
So I understand that it will be somewhere in phase 2. Is it at the end of phase 2 or the beginning?
You could probably answer that better, but usually
Typically, when we're going to do most of the site work up front, but you would start to do that at or around the time that the roads were completed and you started work on the homes in the second phase. We try to time it so that there's not an undue burden on the existing homeowners. You want to get enough people living in the neighborhood to support a pool, utilize it. the community's almost exactly split in half on the phase line right now. So I would guess in that 100 or so occupancies range is probably when we would start work on the pool. And then depending on weather and timing of when that came in. That's typically a number of units that can support a pool and not overburden the HOA.
Okay. In one of the neighborhood questions, question number 10, can we burn the landscape buffer between Lakewood Acres subdivision? And the answer was yes, if space and drainage permitted, a 3-foot-high berm with landscape on top is possible. Has it been determined as to whether or not that will take place or no?
Yeah, that'll be part of the CD package, but it is that there's an alley on with the east side of Lakewood subdivision backing up. There's a long alley, and that's the area they're talking about, which we're going to landscape anyway. So that is where we're planning to put a little bit of we'll do about 3 or 4 foot berm, whatever we can fit, and then we'll be landscaping on top of that berm.
Okay. The only other question I have is that I notice on the bottom of what I'm going to choose to call phase 1, as I see it anyways, you've done a cul-de-sac as opposed to going out to 70. I'm assuming the reason that occurred is because you're not doing the right out any longer. Is that correct?
So that previously that was a right in only, and I don't even think there was an exit on there. It was only a right in.
Yes, that's correct.
And that was all it was. So we thought it was better to, and we did not have a connection to the dead end road at Lakewood. So we thought better planning was to try to use the town for fire and everything likes to have roads interconnect. So we've made that connection instead. And now, Lakewood will also have another pathway out if they wanted to, or if that ever gets annexed, just for school buses, trash, fire trucks, everyone, everything can loop together. So we thought it was a better design than just the right end only.
Okay. That's all I have here.
All right, anyone else?
With the 3 access points, that will be built upon construction, correct?
So we have to have, we're going to build those 2 initially right away, right off Shotwell, and the connection into Lakewood. Our access points are limit how many houses we can get. And I don't remember the exact number. I think with 1 access, we're getting like 30-something houses. And then we can get up to about half of them with that second one. Actually, I think we can get the rest of the second. And then we'll connect that last road. So we'll build the ones in phase 1 first, which are the 2. So we'll get the first 90 units or so off of that. And then we'll connect the other one to get the rest of the units.
Okay. And my last question, what is the length of the buffers?
I'm sorry, what?
Like, what is the length of the buffers? Like, what are the lengths of them?
I think it's just the standard use buffer. It's not labeled on that page, but it's 100 foot total. It's 50 foot from, well, it's actually a little more than 100, but it's 50 foot from the bank of the creek on either side. So it's stream buffer, and it's mostly undisturbed. We do have a little bit of a greenway, a little bit of a sewer connection. There's still spots that'll be disturbed slightly. For the most part, it's completely undisturbed.
Anyone else? Mr. Holder.
We spent a lot of time last week looking at entrances to developments, and one thing I see in here that I like, Lakewood had only 1 access point, but with this development, they now have 2 access points.
That's what we thought. It's actually going to cost the developer a little more to pave that road and just make that whole connection as opposed to just a simple right turn, but we just thought it would look better overall.
Mr. Thompson.
Is your traffic engineer here tonight to provide testimony as to the flow of traffic? And is do you have your appraiser here to give expert testimony as to the land values of adjacent?
No, that was actually done when you approved the plan before. So we have not updated that. I think the town's been working with the traffic report. The town could probably say more about it than I can, because that was something we sort of inherited, that whole traffic study as part of this project.
The joint TIA with Highgate when it was originally done, and with the original approval, they did submit an updated traffic letter, and all that is in the file for the original approval. And since this was going down a lot, it didn't trigger to do an additional study, and it's only been probably 6 months since it was first approved. And also clarification while I'm up here, their typical street sections are 55 and 60 foot, not 50 and 55, I apologize.
Samantha, is that third access point, is that a stub out?
Should have one on Shotwell, Old 70, and then they are stubbing, kind of on the bottom near Parkview, Liberty Lane. And then that third one is considered, because how are they stubbing to Lakewood?
Okay.
And then that Lakewood has the entrance onto Shotwell as well,
Gotcha.
or Old 70, excuse me.
All right, anyone else? Anything else you'd like to add?
Nope, I think we've covered everything. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone here wish to speak in opposition? No one here wishing to speak in opposition. There's no need for rebuttal, and I will turn it over to the council for deliberation.
I just want to confirm with the attorney that since this is a modification and not an approval, that we do not have a need to listen to hear expert testimony regarding traffic and home values, as that was already discussed in the previous.
Yes, sir. Since it is a modification, the underlying special use permit has not expired. So if the council were, and I'm not suggesting this, no one worry, if the council were to deny this modification, the underlying SUP would stand, and it could be constructed in that way. I think based on the testimony you heard from staff as well as the developer today, the modifications don't impact the traffic. And you heard testimony based on property value at the questions of council. And so you have evidence before you this evening upon which you can make a decision to approve or deny the modification.
Thank you.
I will also note, while I have the floor, it is two motions. So you have your special use permit motion, and then you also have your preliminary subdivision plat motion. So two separate motions. The evidence presented before you tonight certainly would go to each. You don't have to have another quasi-judicial hearing.
Mr. Thompson, save me.
Mr. Mayor, after considering the competent material and substantial evidence presented, including the application and materials of record, I move that we approve with conditions SUP application 2019-239-SUP Meadowview special use permit based upon the findings of fact as submitted in our agenda packet and the testimony we've heard.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, after considering the competent material and substantial evidence presented, including the application materials record, I move to approve with conditions the preliminary subdivision plat application number 2019-241-SD Meadowview based upon the information provided, the testimony, and the findings of fact that's included in our agenda packet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
I need a wastewater.
Yes, we need an adoption of a resolution for the wastewater allocation.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Joshua Baird, Town Engineer. As this was an amendment and modification to an original plan, there was an existing wastewater allocation in place. There have been some changes resulting in a lower number of units, as well as we have the letter from the state, reduction of flow letter, that allows us to utilize 250 gallons per day for single-family residents. With that being said, the original previous allocation that was approved was for 59,340. With the changes, and I would also like to note one other change to what's in your packet. There's actually 188 units instead of the 204 that is shown there. With that, the request would be for a total of 48,020 gallons per day. That this would be a reduction from what was previously approved. One other note, during the consent agenda, the wastewater allocation policy update that was approved. This would not be subject to that, but I did want to at least just share, and just as from a frame of reference, this project would score enough points to be granted that allocation if it were subject to that allocation policy. So with that, the request is for 48,020 gallons per day that's before you.
Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion that we approve the wastewater allocation of 48,020 gallons per day for the Meadow subdivision.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the adoption of the resolution for the wastewater allocation. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, thank you. Up next on the agenda is the 2020-02 SD Steeplechase Meadows preliminary plat major modification.
This is also slated as a quasi-judicial action. As I stated a minute ago, the council will sit in its quasi-judicial function. Anyone who's wishing to testify in regards to the Steeplechase Meadows preliminary plat major modification will also need to be affirmed to provide evidence. So I think we'd ask you to stand if you're the applicant, in support of or in opposition to, and of course staff.
You could raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief? Thank you. When you please come up to offer your testimony, please make sure you sign the sign-in sheets. Thank you.
Thanks, Samantha. Wullenwaber, Planning Director. This is the Steeplechase Meadows. This is a major modification to the original Steeplechase subdivision that came before you all in 2018. That was approximately July of 2018 when they did get their original approval. The request is to approve the master plan and develop up to 660 residential lots. The property size is 266 acres. And the yellow stars, again, are where we put the public notice signs. This property does have road frontage on multiple different roads. We wanted to ensure that there was adequate coverage for public notice signs. The master plan, and in your package, you do have a full copy of the set of plans that was submitted and TRC certified. Again, it is a 660 unit maximum, and that is going to be a mixture of single-family homes and townhomes. A townhome could include a 2-unit, which a lot of people refer to as a duplex. So it could include as little as 2 homes together, a 2-unit townhome, up to larger packs as well. The density is 2.31 units an acre. They do provide open space that meets the requirements. And they also have 4 access points into the 4 roads that are already established, as well as 4 stub outs to adjacent properties. So the potential in the future, they could have up to 8 access points. And a TIA was done with the original submittal, and in your package, you do have a copy of the transportation plan. All of the transportation improvements are linked to a certain phase or certain time period in the development. They are subject to all of the original required improvements, and as well as they had an updated trip generation letter. This will be an age-restricted community, so therefore there was not, even though there was an increase in units, there is not a need for additional traffic improvements according to the TIA and the trip generation letter because it is age-restricted. And again, there's a decrease in 1,800 daily trips from the original master plan. And the original steeplechase was not an age restricted. That is another difference in the modification. This is a sample of the amenity center. This is a similar product to a sister community, maybe you could say. This is a 18,000 square foot clubhouse. The original approval was for a 9,000 square foot clubhouse. Indoor pool. They have neighborhood parks. They have pocket parks. There will be a walking trail around the Art Family Lake. And it abuts the Sam's Branch Greenway. The applicant does, and it is included in your packet, they do want to donate 9.71 acres for future parkland, and there is an email in your packets and a statement from Parks and Rec regarding that, and I will ask Scott to come up in just a minute and discuss the park dedication. This is the Townhome Design. As you know, the single families, the design cannot be dictated, but this is the Townhome Design. And you can see they have a 25-foot garage setback, and this does meet the UDC requirements. Again, it is still consistent and compatible with the future land use plan and the comp plan. They can have up to 7 units an acre for planned developments, and they are proposing 2.31 units an acre. And they did address the findings of facts that is listed in your staff report. And again, something I will note for transportation. This does include a realignment of Cover Bridge Road, just like the original, and that alignment we are working through at this time, so the exact spot is not known. But again, this does still include the realignment of Cover Bridge. If approved, staff does recommend conditions be placed. The original conditions do stand, and the phases and the minor site plan will be reviewed administratively if the master plan is approved tonight. All the conditions are the same. There are some conditions you can see that are underlined and in italics that are changed due to the layout and or the need for the transportation improvements. And they will conform with the fire code and with the access points. Again, they have 4 access points, and then they'll have 4 stubs. These will be the updated conditions if the major modification is approved tonight. And if Scott Barnard, did you come and speak up regarding the parkland, please?
All right, good evening. These are words you'll probably rarely hear come out of my mouth. It was actually not our recommendation to accept the 9 acres as parkland. What we vet that with is our Park and Recreation Master Plan as we look at places that we've identified in our community for additional park needs. Across the street from the tract, the 9-acre tract is the parking and 4 acres that the town owns, which serves as the greenway access to the Sam's Branch Greenway, what will eventually shortly actually have the tunnel that'll connect all the way into downtown. That subdivision over there, Ashcroft, excuse me. Does lack recreation. There's demand for a playground and probably some open space for perhaps a dog park, something like that. And that's something that we've internally discussed as potential for something that may follow the construction of that parking lot and maybe potential restrooms there. Whereas across the street, that 9 acres probably wouldn't meet that same need the same way. I would not envision the children leaving Ashcroft, going through the tunnel and across the street and using recreation or park space over there the same way that they would use it in the entrance of their neighborhood. If I, as your Parks and Recreation Director, were tasked with Parks, Recreation, and open space, I would be singing a different tune. I do think that 9 acres is valuable to the town because it adjoins the greenway and preserves a view of that, as well as it protects water quality in that watershed there. So intrinsically, I see value in it, but not as parkland the way I feel like you guys are entrusting me to recommend what we need or don't need for parkland.
Cool. Questions or comments? Thank you, sir.
And that was the end of my presentation. You have the conditions in your packet, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Granis?
So I understand what you explained about the traffic impact analysis, but that's 21 months old. We have additional rooftops in that area. And I'm a little concerned with respect to, which I was going to ask the applicant, but apparently there was not a new TIA done, which I just stated, but also they're utilizing the ITE trip generation manual to make decisions on traffic. I'm curious as to why that's acceptable to the staff.
There was a trip generation letter that was provided with any modifications, especially if the lots change. We do ask that an updated letter from a traffic engineer. And with that letter, there is a transportation engineer here that will speak after the applicant's presentation. They do look at those things. They look at the original TIA, so he can give you more insight into that because they do not want to speak out of turn. But staff was acceptable of that letter because it came from a professional transportation traffic engineer. And being this is age restricted, we feel there is going to be a lot less traffic, and that's something else that the staff or the applicant can also address. But generally speaking, age restricted does have less needs than all age community, I guess.
And is it my understanding that they will not be responsible for a traffic light on the corner of O'Neill and Covered Bridge?
At the realignment, they will be installing a traffic signal. The realignment of Cover Bridge that connects into O'Neill, yes.
And with respect to the wastewater allocation, is this going to be an additional requirement, or is it the existing requirement?
Joshua Baird, Town Engineer. No, this is not additional. This is, if you recall, the original request was for 244,000 gallons per day back in 2018. This is a reduction similar to the previous project. This is also a reduction based on the reduced flow letter that we have, the type of community it is. We expect that we're comfortable with those flows. So this is actually a reduction from the originally approved 244 to the total of 166.
Okay. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for staff? All right. Thank you, Samantha. We'll now hear from the developer.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Mayor and Town Council. I'm Catherine McPherson with ESP Associates, representing the developer and, great, thank you. We're here to show you the new project. As Samantha said, it's 266 acres. We're doing an age-restricted development with 3 distinct single-family products. There'll be a 43-foot wide lots, 53-foot wide lots, and 57-foot wide lots. All the units will have 2 to 5 bedrooms, and then we'll be doing 2 types of townhome units, 2 different styles that are 2 units together, townhomes. We are providing a minimum of 25% open space. The project's going to have open space throughout the community. We'll have a large amenity center of 18,000 square foot clubhouse with an indoor pool, plus a lot of tennis courts, pickleball, bocce, and other type recreational elements. Our pocket parks will have meeting areas, perhaps chessboards. Dog park is one of the items, lots of seating, the walking trail around the lake. This is a representative of the clubhouse. As I said, it does have an indoor pool. There will not be an outdoor pool, it'll just be indoor. Our entry monuments will be at the, do I have a laser?
It won't work.
It won't work.
No, I can zoom in.
Okay. The main entrance, the main entrance will be there on Covered Bridge Road, right opposite of Erp Lake. Oops, right there. And then we'll have another secondary entrance monumentation at O'Neill Street at that entrance. We are providing some alternate street sections with wider planting strips between the road and the sidewalk to provide a nice pedestrian walkability of the community. What else? As we said, or as Samantha said about our traffic improvements, and we do have our engineer here who can speak to this, but we will be realigning Covered Bridge Road to O'Neill Street, and there will be a traffic signal at that point. And then the other traffic improvements will be the same as what was required before. These are just some examples of the town, or the single-family product with the driveways and the setbacks noted. These are the townhome standards. And then I can take questions, or if you have questions for the engineer.
All right, questions or comments? Mr. Granis?
Again, the question about not doing a TIA and utilizing the existing one. It's been 21 months since the last one was done. And it appears to me that you're using the ITA trip generation manual as a guideline. And I would be curious to know, I know that's the 10th edition. I'd be curious to know when that was published, 10th edition.
Oh, that's a good question. It's been, first of all, Ronald Stevenson with Ramey Kemp and Associates, 5808 Farrington Place in Raleigh. That's a good question. I want to say we've been using it for about maybe a year or two, something like that. Year and a half, 2 years, something like that is when we've been using it regularly. The trips. And a couple things, I'm going to try to address your question from earlier, and I think now. The original TIA, when it was done, and it has been about 2 years ago roughly, it did project traffic from a lot of the other developments in the area. So we were taking into account future traffic growth. In addition to the other developments in the area, it did include a normal growth of 3% of the traffic that was already there. So we had 3% per year increase in traffic, plus we had, I believe it was maybe 6 other developments in the area that we considered the traffic for. So with the TIA a couple of years ago, the improvements that you saw on the screen were the result of that TIA, the review of that TIA. The new plan that is coming, that is before you, is, as you heard, age restricted. So this letter, the trip generation letter that you mentioned and as staff mentioned as well, was done to get a feel for how does the age-restricted development, how does the trips compare to the original TIA that was done a couple of years ago? And the answer is the trips are about half. It reduces by about 1/2 the trips. So we're not asking to go back and reevaluate the road improvements. We're just, saying they're good. We're going to reduce the traffic by about 1/2 and build the same road improvements that were identified a couple of years ago.
And how was that determined again, that it was half the trips?
It is the ITE trip generation manual. It is. So we compared the TIA trips from 2 years ago with the projections for an age-restricted community. And it's about roughly 1/2 of the trips.
Okay. That's really all I had on the TIA.
All right, anyone else? Questions for engineer? All right, thank you, sir. All right, any other questions for the applicant at this time? All right, thank you, ma'am. I will now, if there's anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition, would you please step forward and state your name for the record?
Mayor, council, pleasure. John Salupo, 117 Hanson, Run, Clayton. And I just got a couple of quick notes on this. Again, on the 660 units, I understand this was changed to age restricted. Can you tell me over 55? It's an over 55 unit. Okay. So my recommendation is, even if the 600 units, everybody only has one vehicle, did we establish how many cars are coming in and out of those points traffic-wise? Because even if everybody has one vehicle, and there's two households, we're looking 600 in a day, 600 out a day on two of the busiest roads that connect Clayton, which is, as you already know, is overwhelming during even off-peak hours. We never seem to have a Clayton traffic analysis on hand. Is there any reason why? We always seem to depend on the builders to tell us what is going to work and how many people are coming in. I just heard a number I'm sorry, was it like 40 or 80 per day? So do we actually have an idea of how many people are coming in and coming out per day into this intersection that is already overcrowded? And would it be an appropriate course of action to, instead of opening just the 4 access points, why don't we open up more of the access points to alleviate the traffic of all the other developments that are in that same vicinity, which equal almost 600 homes besides this one, just in the same area? So the question is, open more access points to alleviate traffic. I was going to hitch us up with donating that land for school, but since it's an age-restricted community, I don't think that's going to work here. And also having our own traffic safety or traffic analysis when these subdivisions come into play. Not to digress, but that Buckhorn 245 units, they're saying 45 U-turns at 42. That's I've gone down.
We can only talk about what we're talking about. We can't talk about anything but what we're talking about.
Understood. More accesses and a new traffic study. Maybe pump the brakes a little bit before we go forward and approving it. Thank you.
Does anybody want to jump on this? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to know real quick while you're up and have the floor, what are your qualifications to provide the testimony?
My qualification is just driving the roads, sir.
Okay.
Just driving the roads, you know, just as a homeowner, and this is not going to devalue our property like other things. So just speaking on this, just as being a homeowner. You know, I travel O'Neill Covered Bridge for work on a daily basis, peak, off-peak hours, and it's overwhelming at times. I'm not sure if you drive them. No matter what, everybody's going to have at least one car. And you're looking at least 300 to 600 in and out every single day. We have 4 access points with the capability of 8. Why not use them? Why not use more than the 4 that we have to digress and to ease the congestion off of the only major intersections that we currently have right now? That's the qualifications I have because I sit in the traffic. That's it.
Well, for me, I don't think it is the developers. I don't think we give the burden to the developer to take care of all of the traffic that's out there. I think this developer particularly has already agreed to many of the road improvements in that area for this, which is extremely rare, because when you are taking your private individual money to enhance someone else's property, such as the North Carolina Department of Transportation, that's pretty much unheard of. And in the 16 years as mayor of the town of Clayton, I've never heard of that. So I don't feel like we have to burden the developer to create additional access points for all the growth that's already here and that's already been approved for future building. And insofar as the traffic analysis, I guess staff could probably handle that better themselves, but I think from the elected perspective, it's the burden of the developer to bring this information and data to us. It's not that we need to invest taxpayers' money to find out what's out there. We're not trying to develop and profit Clayton like a developer is. So it's the developer's burden of proof to bring in what the traffic counts are with professional certified individuals to provide that information to us in a quasi-judicial setting such as this, where everything must be factual.
Understood. I don't believe that is factual. If we brought a Clayton.
Considering your professional skills, see, I can't even allow what you just said to be in testimony because you don't have a professional background in transportation. So my job and role during a quasi-judicial hearing is to make sure that the evidence is valid and can be substantiated. So your experience is not the same as someone who is a licensed professional.
And I absolutely agree with that. And then, since I don't know all the parameters behind it, if you're saying that they did above and beyond, we should applaud them. The only thing, again, I'm saying is, my experience is in other areas of the where I did fight for my community was when we had traffic analysis done, and then the town did bring them in. They were quite different and completely jaded towards, again, the development side. But you're right. I don't have that qualification. It's a suggestion for future large build-outs that we have. That's all it is. And like I said, so I don't have all the facts on the issues. The only request I had was opening up more access and inlets to it. But if you agree and everybody's comfortable that they have gone above and beyond what was necessary at this point in time, I have to accept that. And thank you for hearing me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right. I'll give the floor to the developer if you would like to address what's just been presented. Certainly not required, but you have the opportunity to rebut.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the town board. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Randy King. I'm with Pulte Group. We're at 1225 Crescent Green Drive in Cary. I am a professional engineer, civil engineer. I've practiced in this area for over 30 years. I've been with the company about 13 years developing residential communities. So those would be my credentials. I don't think I have anything to add other than to thank staff. They've done an excellent job of working with us on this project. And our team has done an excellent job of bringing their past knowledge of this project forward and applying it to the project that we hope to build here. Just a couple of points I'll reiterate. We are making this active adult, restricted community, not targeted, restricted. And we are increasing the size of the amenity beyond what was previously approved. 9,000 square foot amenity becomes 18. That includes an indoor pool, which our residents will use year round, which we think is better. Our traffic engineer has indicated that the active adult status does reduce the amount of trips generated by our residents, and we've seen that demonstrated in other neighborhoods. And with that, we just appreciate your support. We're glad to be here tonight. We look forward to working together with y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any further questions, comments? All right, if not, then I will turn the deliberation, I will call the council into deliberation and turn it over to them for their discussion. Mr. Granis.
Mr. Mayor, after considering the competent material and substantial evidence presented, including the application and materials of record, I move to approve the preliminary subdivision plat application 2020-02-SD, Steeplechase Meadows. This motion is based on the following findings. First, that the preliminary subdivision is consistent with the adopted plans and policies of the town. 2, that the subdivisions meets all required specifications of the Town of Clayton Unified Development Code. 3, the subdivision will not be detrimental to the use or orderly development of other properties in the surrounding area and will not violate the character of existing standards for development of properties in the surrounding area. And 4, the subdivision design will provide for the distribution of traffic in a manner that will avoid the mitigate congestion within the immediate area and will provide for the unified and orderly use or extension of public infrastructure and will not materially endanger the environment, public health, safety, or welfare. The applicant meets the findings subject to the following conditions, which are stated in the agenda packet.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Mayor, if I may, for clarification, as Joshua comes up, for the clarification of the record, is the acceptance of the parkland part of this action this evening, or will that come at a later date, Samantha?
According to the town code, it does have to be accepted by the council, so they would have to make another action to accept the parkland.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was clear that if we are going to accept it as parkland, that will come as a separate council action at a different time.
And I should not say parkland, if we were to dedicate the land as an open space to credit towards the fees.
If we were to accept it, which it would make it become town land.
Right.
Town owned. So that will come back before the council at a later time.
We should do that tonight if possible.
Okay.
But if you choose to table that, I mean, it could work different ways, but it does say it has to be accepted by town council.
Correct. That's what I knew, and that's why I wanted to make sure that if this motion was intended to be the record of the council accepting the the recreational open space. I'll quit calling it parkland. Getting eyes back there now. But I'm not sure the council intended to act one way or the other on that with that motion. I could be wrong, but I wanted the record to be clear. So is it the will of the council that we address that this evening, or that we have it come back before the council?
I thought it was part of the motion.
Me too.
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to amend my motion because if I recall, one of the conditions referred to that 9.71 acres. If I can get a little help from the staff, that would be a good thing.
It's part of her original conditions when she made her presentation. What's up here?
Right here. But I don't think I see it in the conditions, and I may be overlooking it.
So condition number 20 states that the dedication of the proposed parkland, again, should be worded, recreational open space, is accepted by the town council. The development shall coordinate with the planning department to determine the requirements for recreation fees. If the dedication of the proposed parkland is not accepted by the town council, the final 3 sets of plans shall reflect this.
So I just want to make it clear, I was under the assumption that the property that they would like to dedicate is not going to be accepted by the town. That would be a part of my motion.
Okay.
And I base that on the expert testimony of our Parks and Rec director.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure the record was clear on whether that action was being taken, since the way the conditions wrote it is if this, then that. So the record is now clear that the motion, that the condition is that it's not accepted.
That's correct.
Great.
So where are we?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Now, the adoption, now I guess we go to our engineer for wastewater.
So as we briefly described earlier, a previous approval of 244,210 gallons per day. If you recall, that was originally split, about 120 that was approved at the time, and then the second 120 was an administrative approval. Now, again, with the items we've discussed, the new request is for a total of 166,100, and we would request the full approval of that, to go ahead and provide the full approval for that, and none to be administered later by staff.
Mr. Granis.
Is that the same amount that was already dedicated, or is this increased?
Decreased.
The original amount was 244.
So it's actually decreased.
Decreasing, yes, sir.
Okay.
About 80,000 gallons.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the adoption of the resolution number 2020-09. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Mr. Holder.
I'm a little confused about our previous motion. Because my understanding, it was part of the motion to approve the parkland being accepted. No, he says it's not. So what's in the motion, Kimberly?
The motion is that you accepted it without accepting the open space.
That was not spelled out in our original motion.
I'm sorry?
That was not spelled out in the original motion. That was an addendum after we'd voted.
That was the modified motion, correct?
We haven't voted on the modified motion.
Attorney, do you feel like they need to?
I agree. If you'd like to do a motion to reconsider. That's why I wanted the record to be clear, because I didn't think that it was, based on the way, when looking back at the condition of the if or, granted, hearing the testimony from the staff. So if we want to go back and do a motion to reconsider on the subdivision, preliminary plat, subdivision plat, then we certainly can.
Mr. Granis.
So shall I recreate the entire motion?
No, I think first of all.
Or shall I only?
Just a motion to reconsider.
Sure, I think
Reconsider.
I was looking at Mr. Holder, if he's asking for a motion to reconsider. Certainly anyone can make a motion to reconsider, but we can reconsider that.
Okay. I'll make a motion to reconsider.
Okay.
I need a second. Sorry.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for reconsideration. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Discussion. Mr. Holder.
I thought I understood Scott to say that acreage was in a spot that would be great for the Ashcroft people to come under the tunnel and access that for recreation. Did I not hear that?
No.
I don't believe that was.
No, he says the opposite.
What he said.
He didn't think that people from Ashcroft would go under the tunnel to access. He felt like Ashcroft would rather have it in their proximity and not on the other side.
Okay. Make your motion.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, for the record, to be clear, since we had a motion to reconsider, I would suggest that we just go through and have a motion for approval of the preliminary plat subdivision based on the new deliberation, just so that the record is clear.
So moved.
Have to be fully read, but good job.
Second.
Good job.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Awesome. All right. We made it. And I'm really excited about this project. Probably one of the most exciting projects since I've been the mayor for 16 years. And although I didn't wear my glasses tonight, so I couldn't exactly pick out which lot I'm interested in, but it is close to Art Lake and the indoor swimming pool. But I think my first question has to be, is this 55 and older? Okay, good. Well, just one more year and I qualify. That's awesome. It's awesome. No, we're so excited for you all. Thank you for what you're doing for Clayton. Thank you for your compliments on our staff. Obviously, you don't always get that. We know we have a great staff, but it's great that other developers figure out that we do as well. And I think I speak for our council. If there's any way that we as elected body can help you with anything, please feel free to just reach out. All right. Awesome. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is under old business. It's the nutrient credit purchase agreement.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rich Capola, Public Services Director. The item you have in front of you this evening is continuation of a discussion with regards to the new Neuse River water reclamation facility that we have begun design and permitting for out at Neuse River. A big chunk of the discussion in previous conversations have been regarding the nutrient offset requirements. It's a permitting requirement based on the fact that our discharge does go directly into the Neuse River. There are pretty clear state rules that set out the amount of, basically in this case, pounds or credits of nitrogen that are required of all dischargers. In our case, we currently have 32,000 pounds. That handles the 3.5 million gallons of discharge capacity that we're already allotted from the state. We've been working with a consultant who helped us identify the availability of just a little over 23, or just a little under 24,000 available pounds of credit that could support our new expansion to go from 2.5 MGD direct discharge to 6 million gallons per day as we're currently designing to. The request in front of you will, first of all, be able to find that number of credits available in the basin is pretty unheard of. So this was a great opportunity for us to really bite off a large chunk of the need for our new project in one transaction. So we negotiated with the seller. We have a contract in front of you that we would like to execute, or would like to give the permission of the manager to execute. Following that, if we're so lucky, we will begin the permit modification to get the credits added to our permit and hopefully close sometime in July on the actual credits. In terms of total number of million gallons per day, there are some state rules that are actually going in front of the Environmental Management Commission here this month that would actually help our case with how far these credits can stretch in terms of number of gallons per day that they would cover for a discharge. So we are optimistic that those rules will go through, as well as some other conversations that we're having with the department, with DEQ regarding the specific inclusion of these in our permit. So the request for this evening is to authorize the manager to enter into the contract to purchase the credits for approximately $7.2 million and move forward with the permit modification.
Mr. Granis?
Is the $300 a pound price a pretty reasonable price with respect to the industry?
Yes, based on some other conversations we've had with other municipalities or other utilities that have had to make purchases, we are all, it is a reasonable price, as well as buying in bulk. We are getting a much better price by basically making one transaction, buying all the credits that are available from this particular seller. So this is a very good deal for us.
And how do we intend to pay for it?
Robert McGuy figures out how to pay for it. He'll be talking to you next.
My next question.
Actually, the next item on the agenda, I believe. I think it's I didn't bring the agenda, but the short answer is debt financing. We have had conversations with the Local Government Commission in advance of tonight to preempt hopefully entering into the contract and move forward with placing that debt.
Rich, if you could address this is part of our capital improvement planning related to the wastewater treatment
Which is
plant.
what I thought.
And this is accelerated with that, but it's.
Yeah. So one of the things, so yes, this is already incorporated into the overall conversation that we've been having with the total cost of this project. This is actually helping us in terms of what we thought kind of our worst case scenario would be, getting us more, getting the number down, at least with regards to the nitrogen. Additionally, in terms of our project, this is a big step for us in terms of being able to go to the state and be able to move forward with the actual permitting and ultimately the construction of the facility. So to be able to kind of check this one off the list early on in the capital project would be a big win for us as well.
Any other questions for staff? If not, I will, Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion we authorize the nutrient credit purchase agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the purchase agreement. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is the Neuse River Water Reclamation Facility financing approval. Question is, how are we going to pay for this?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Tonight we have a resolution to make an application with the Local Government Commission for approval of up to $15 million of revenue bonds issued by the town's water sewer system. A good portion of that will be used to procure the nitrogen credits, the 7.2. We remain hopeful that the difference between the maximum amount and the nitrogen purchase, that the LGC will allow us to use those funds for preliminary costs related to the Neuse River Water Reclamation Facility. We have received RFP proposals for financing. Right now, staff is working with the LGC staff to gain support for a 25-year term, financing term. We will come back to council at the next meeting and make a recommendation for a financing proposal.
Questions or comments for staff? Mr. Granis.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the adoption of the resolution 2020-10. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Next under new business is the 2020-18-SNA Steeplechase Meadows Alternative Sign Plan.
They left. They left.
I don't think we need them.
Samantha, Wullenwaber, Planning Director. I do introduce just in case people jump in on different parts of the video so they know who is presenting. So just in case, I know you guys know my name, but for everybody else. This is the
I just can't
alternative.
remember your last name. That's the
It's
hard
okay.
part, you know.
It's hard for
We're
me,
working
too.
on it, though. How long you been here?
2 years.
Yeah, we're slow learners, but we're good.
So this is the alternative sign plan for Steeplechase Meadows. And again, the applicant, they did leave, but it was included in their master plan, but just for proper record keeping, we do need to do the alternative sign plan as well. And this is for their tenant residential identification signs. They do exceed the height and the sign face area. And the stars on the screen do show where all of these signs are proposed. And there also is a sign layout, a master sign plan in their master subdivision plan. This thing vibrates. Sorry. The request is for, you can see they do exceed the requirements substantially. And we're going to go with maximums here. So their requested is up to a 12 feet tall sign, a 10 feet tall sign, and then the 6 feet is within the code. And then the largest would be 150 square feet for one side for the sign. And this is the proposed signs. Again, the name may change. It may not be Carolina Steeplechase. It may be something else, but this is just showing the overall design of the sign. As you can see, it is rather a large sign, one of the largest residential identification signs, probably the largest in town. And staff does recommend approval of the alternative sign plan in just a condition, and that is at least 5 foot from the property line, which is required by code anyway. And that is found in the safe site triangle, which is also already in the code. Escaped. Oh.
Well, speak of the devil.
We came back.
Okay, that is all I have. Again, staff does recommend approval of the alternative sign plan for Steeplechase Meadows.
All right, questions or comments? I don't really have a problem with this, Mr. Granis.
On the bottom diagram, how tall is that?
The max would be allowed would be the 12 feet from the sign itself would be 12 feet from grade, but I would assume there may be some sort of berm or a hill, so that would be from bottom of grade to top of the sign is 12 feet. But again, depending on the topography of the land and where they're going to put it, it may appear to be taller, but from the grade to the top of the sign would be permitted at 12 feet tall.
Okay. Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 2020-18 SNA. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. So you're good. I like the name Carolina Steeplechase. Yeah. Steeplechase Meadows on a monument sign sounds kind of cheap to me. Kind of like Shady Pines, exactly. All right, up next on the agenda, y'all are killing me. Up next on the agenda is the 2018 Local Water Supply Plan.
Thank you all.
Apparently this is me tonight.
Hey, Brian.
Yes. Rich Capola, Public Services Director. Byron had a family emergency and couldn't come today, so I'm going to pinch it, so please don't hit me too bad here. But this is the local water supply plan. Annually, we have to submit a report to the state essentially saying what our usage data was for the previous year, where our current holdings are in terms of capacity, and what we're looking at doing for future projections so that we're actually can show them that we did what we said, we're continuing to operate within the rules, and we're planning for what's coming. We've gotten basically I guess, conditional approval from the state. The final step of that is getting a resolution from the council supporting the local water supply plan, which essentially, from your all standpoint, the big element of this that impacts us from a budget standpoint is the future capacity purchases that are tied to the growth of the town. As you recall, those are pre-programmed in under the CIP plan for the Water and Sewer Fund. So approval of this or a resolution adopting the local water supply plan basically says we're going to continue to support the utility moving forward. Excuse me. Any questions that are hopefully not very hard?
Any questions for Byron? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, and I can never grow a beard like Byron, just so you know. It's not going to happen.
Or a rat tail. All right, up next is the LED budget, LED project budget amendments.
We're asking council to approve 2 budget amendments tonight related to the completion of Phase 2 of the LED changeover project. The first amendment results in a realignment of the infrastructure development budget and the electric fund. We're going to reduce that line item by approximately $117,000 and transfer those monies over to the capital project fund for the LED to complete the Phase 2. Staff felt like that was a better option than doing the fund balance appropriation.
Gotcha. Questions or comments for Robert? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the ordinances. Mr. Granis.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we adopt the ordinances 2020-03-01 and 2020-03-02.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adoption of the ordinances. Is there further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Move along with staff reports, beginning with the town manager.
Report.
Town attorney. Town clerk.
Reports, thank you.
All right, we'll have a census update with Joy, our library director.
Fancy clicker. Hello, council and mayor. I'm so excited to end this party with talk about the census and a little extra bonus information about coronavirus. So let's go. So we are preparing for the census. April 1 is Census Day, but starting on March 12th, you'll start to get mail that has your access code to get access the census online. You can also fill it out on paper or over the phone. So we are doing a few things to prepare for this at the library. We hosted 5 opportunities for census recruiters to advertise jobs on site. These are part-time jobs. They run about $17.50 an hour, so it's a really great opportunity for people who need a little bit of work during the census year. In addition, we created a 30-minute free fast pass to allow census applicants to apply for their jobs. And we will also use this for people who want to come in and fill out the census at the library. We don't want there to be any barriers to access to the census. In addition to our 6 public access computers, we do have iPads and Chromebooks that we'll let people use to access the census as well. I don't know if you've seen what the questions look like, but they're super simple. It's basically, where do you live? Who lives with you on April 1? It's very simple, so we're hoping to have some volunteers on site as well to help people navigate that. Time can be added to our Fast Pass so that if somebody can't complete the census in time, they'll get more than 30 minutes. So what's next? I'm working with Stacy to create some public service announcements to go out on our Facebook and Instagram feeds. And we'll create posters and flyers to put around town. And we're also working on Spanish language materials to encourage our Latino community's participation in this. There's a huge risk of undercounting with the census, so we want to make sure we get as many people as possible, get the word out that there will not be a citizenship question, and that our census answers are private, and that our information can't be taken and used against us. So that's all up to April 1st. After April 1st, we are working to incentivize our census participation, so we'll be having some events at the library. We'll continue sending out those public service announcements. Once you get your information where you can log on and either make an account to do your census online or just to fill it out on paper or on the phone, there are a few waves of follow-up that the census does, and so you can, if you don't have it filled out by a certain amount of time, then they're going to come back and check and find out, they'll call you and say like, hey, did you know you can fill out the census? And if you don't answer your phone, then they come to your house. So there's a pretty big effort for us to do this. And I don't know if I've got it in here, but I'll mention a little bit here. So all of our scale is a little bit off for these slides. I apologize. So some of our posts are going to give facts about the census, and we'll further explain issues in our comments on our posts. And we'll also direct users to 2020census.gov. We want people to understand that $675 million are at stake here. So the answers that we give help to allocate funding for our federal programs like the Children's Health just forgot my acronym, State Children's Health Insurance Plan, excuse me, Title I schools, fire departments get money from this. All kinds of programs will be affected. And so like in this one, it just says in 10 minutes, you'll help determine your area's federal funding and representation for the next 10 years. So it's a pretty powerful message that it only takes you about 10 minutes to do the census, and it has a very long-lasting impact. And so I'd like to follow that up with information about the coronavirus. So as you know, we have kind of a serious situation going on with coronavirus. And while we are not concerned in the library that this is going to have huge ramifications. We want to go ahead and put our public at ease. And so we are doing a few things to kind of help the public as they come in. Actually, you know, before I go into that, do y'all have questions about the census? No? Okay, great. Sorry about that. So we're providing some informational signs about preventing the spread of coronavirus. This is basically washing your hands, not touching your face, making sure that you use a tissue. We have posted these at our public access desks, and this is the same kind of information that we give people about the flu. We want people to know that if they're sick, they need to stay home and they need to take precautions not to spread germs. And we're also going a little bit further with how we normally clean things. As any book comes into the library, we clean it off with just a kind of regular cleaner. But during this time of heightened awareness about the virus, we will be using Clorox wipes to disinfect. This is especially important for like board books and for things that babies put in their mouths, but also for any cover that people might sneeze on or cough on. So we're really cleaning those off. We're also making sure to wipe down our computers after every use. We typically wipe them down at the end of the day every day to clean off our surfaces, but we're just going to be wiping them down and disinfecting them more often. So we're not going crazy with our response. We're just bringing it up a little bit further than what we would normally do for our books and our resources.
Is this concept going on in other public departments of the town? Because to me, it looks like we're performing some due diligence to help, do all we can preventative action for this without going overboard and creating a frenzy. So I'm curious to know is this going on at the library, obviously, and where is it going on? Where else is it going on?
Many of the public-facing departments are departments that I supervise. I have spoken with both customer service and Parks and Rec, who have public-facing departments, and we're looking at different things that we can implement there, particularly in the children's area at the Parks and Rec, and for customers as they come into customer service. So yes, we are duplicating many of these efforts in those departments as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Mr. Grandis?
Yes.
Not a question, just a comment. Joy, I want to thank you, and Nancy, you as well, for being proactive in trying to jump out in front of a potential serious issue. So thank you very much.
I think the public, they just want to know that we're paying attention and taking steps. We're trying not to go too far, but yeah.
No, I think it's great to create that kind of awareness and for everybody. Jason?
I want to thank Joy for, number one, being the best library director of the state, and for really taking the reign of projects that may not fall, this census thing, that's something that you grabbed it, took it, and ran with it, and are making it your priority to make sure everybody's is counted. And that's something that I don't know if other communities are this blessed to have somebody doing that. And that's important. And I just want to thank you for taking on things like that and making and advocating for the town. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I just want to say that keep in mind, while everything he says is true, keep in mind she is looking for a new library and funding for that in the future. So
Sure am.
Let's keep some balance in all this. Awesome.
We would help everybody in this state take the census at our new library. Great, thank you.
Awesome. All right, I'll now open the floor for informal discussion and public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward and state your name for the record.
My name is Jill Bergener. I'm a certified biological safety professional and a registered biological safety professional, which most people have never even heard of that because there's only about 200 such people in the United States. I worked for 30 years in high containment laboratories and biocontainment. I'm retired. Listening to the coronavirus issue, I wanted to offer my services. For example, I can teach people how to segregate and isolate like a sick family member in their home and things like that. And I'm very familiar with aerosol transmission viruses. I've worked with multi-drug resistant TB. I could go on, but you don't want to hear all that stuff. But anyway, if I can be of service to the town, I'd be more than happy to help. I know about disinfectants, which disinfectants work, what are the concentrations, et cetera, et cetera. But the other reason that I actually wanted to, so if I can be of service, I'd be more than happy to give lectures or teach people how to do things. Anyway, okay, that being said, my second reason for coming up here is that I'm a master gardener involved in the community garden. And one of the things I've been able to get out of the garden in the last couple years are chemical herbicides, pesticides, and insecticides. We tend to use just organic materials there now, and our garden flourishes without that. I'm concerned about the chemicals that we use in the public parks, particularly where our children are. We do know that glyphosate, which is a generic name for Roundup, is IARC calls it a probable human carcinogen. As you may be aware, both animals and small children are much more sensitive to carcinogens because they don't have the same enzyme systems, and the enzyme systems aren't mature in young children. So it's problematic for them, and much lower exposures can be problematic. I personally just make my own weed killer with 5% vinegar, a surfactant, Dawn dishwashing soap, and some Epsom salts. It works very, very good. One of the nice things about it, it's water soluble, so these chemicals don't stay in our grounds and in our areas for long periods of time. We know that it varies depending on a lot of conditions, but glyphosate has been known to stay in the soils for up to 23 years. So as we apply more and more every year, you get kind of a bioaccumulation. And again, it depends on the rainfall in the soils. I mean, there's a lot of factors that determine how fast it goes away, but it's something I want to make you aware of. And I also want to ask, and I know the answer to this question, but has our city water ever been tested for glyphosate? The government does not do glyphosate testing. They started up a program to do so, but they said it was too difficult and too expensive. But I know you can get a glyphosate test for $89. So anyway, I was just curious if any of you knew.
I don't know. I think for me, that might be like a county question because the majority of the water that we get and sell and distribute is coming from Johnson County. So
okay.
I don't.
All right. Well,
Which comes from the East River.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, I would advocate using soluble agricultural products, not atrazine and glyphosate and some of those things, particularly in our public parks. They're water soluble. If you need a commercial product, if you don't want to make your own, Burn Off is one that I would recommend. Again, it's acetic acid based product. It's soluble, it breaks down in water, and I think it's really important to protect our environment. We've been very successful in the garden. Our production continues to go up even though we've eliminated those kind of chemicals. So I would like you all to look into that, or what do I need to do, or tell me what I need to do to see how we can at least eliminate it from our parks where the children are playing and things.
Yeah, we're going to send you to the town manager, so you make sure he gets all your information and your contact stuff.
All right.
And make sure staff has your contact information for anything else pertaining to the other stuff. What you spoke about initially.
The coronavirus and yeah.
Yes.
Basic infection control measures. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Anyone else? All right, no one else. I'll turn it over to council for comments. Good. And now I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved. Second.
For the record, if I may, we're going to closed session. It's pursuant to A3. It's correct on the screen. It was incorrect on our on our agendas. I just wanted to make sure, and specifically in part to discuss the Shenandoah Homes lawsuit.
And I anticipate action will be taken. What's this?
All in favor? Yeah, we're going for 2 items. Yeah.
We're going in for both, A5 and A6.
All right. I'll entertain the motion. Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we're going to take a
5 minute.
5-minute break.
Move we go back to regular session.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Granis.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding settling the Shenandoah Homes matter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the memorandum of understanding settling the Shenandoah Homes matter. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Good night.